Okay, so as I said, I'm going to take you through a bit of a journey. We're going to look at material that was found in an abandoned shed, pretty much, that really casts a light on some interesting parts of Stoke Newington's history. And our journey really begins with this guy, W.H. Jones, printers. You had quite a few of them in the area. We're going to hear about him and kind of what we ended up discovering in the shed in the back garden. So William Henry Jones was a printer, born 1892, died 1971. He lived in Winston Road and in Albion Road, and he had a print shop in Green Lanes. Started off in 56 Green Lanes and then quickly moved to number 50. Okay, and we're going to see what happens there. This is one of the items that was found in that treasure trove that I'm going to present to you in a minute. So you can see W.H. Jones and company, kind of everything that they were doing at the time. This is the shop in Green Lanes. Okay, so managed to get that just the other day. Was very pleased about that. Unfortunately, it's not there today. We're going to see in a minute. So he had the print shop there, and at some point he got two apprentices that worked with him. And as often the case with businesses, when he retired, then Ken and Jim took over the business, and they kept the name. This is them at work, right? So this is sort of proper old school printing. Okay, this is professional printing that was done on premises. Sadly, this is the site today. All right, this is 50 Green Lanes. So next time you walk past, this is where the shop was. But they moved further up the road, probably when it was demolished. So the last shop that they had was at number 127 Green Lanes. This is what it looked like, and you can see that even on the business card, you know, Jim Spaulding was the director, but they kept the name. Established over 100 years ago. So how did we get to the treasure trove that I'm going to share with you? So sadly, when the shop closed, because Jim sadly passed away, and the shop closed, they actually asked local artists that have a studio in the area to just help them with the clear out, help them sell all this professional equipment. And while they were doing that, as we're going to see, they stumbled upon this treasure trove of material in the shed in the back garden. They also introduced them to the co-owners of Atom Gallery, which are there now. Okay, so this is kind of the full circle, and it's quite nice to see that the site of the old print shop is now obviously still used to display print work. So we're going to look at this treasure trove. This is the message that David from Pixel Press, when I was kind of doing my research and asking him to tell me about how was it? Did you just go into the back garden and just sort of find all these papers scattered around? And from his description, as you can see, it was quite astonishing for them as they were doing this clear out to find amongst all these lawnmowers and a lot of rubbish, essentially the whole catalog, I would say, of W.H. Jones. So they kept a lot of samples of the catalogs that they produced, the little booklets, the little business cards, the little labels that they actually had printed for some of the local builders merchants, and all that was preserved. When I did the audit, so David got in touch with me a few years ago, told me about it. I rushed over without even finishing my dinner. Took a lot of photos, as you can imagine, and I shared those at the time. And a few weeks ago, he got in touch again, and he said, hey, you remember that big box with all that stuff? Do you want it? I was like, what? After 5 minutes, I was knocking on his door. It was quite, I think, sort of suitable as well. It was my birthday, and I thought, hey, this is the best present ever. Right? So this is pretty much it. This is me doing this, if you like, almost like an inventory of this amazing collection. In total, there were 104 unique items. Some of them had kind of duplicates as well, so a number of copies of the same item. But when you look at the addresses and the clients that W.H. Jones produced these for, 33 were Stoke Newington related, so I kept those. I kept all of them. And 71 were kind of Islington, Finchley. I'm going to just play a very quick video that's like a time lapse, because when I talk about a treasure trove and you think, come on, what do you mean a treasure trove of printing material? This is what I mean. So it starts kind of normal speed and then it will pick up, because it took me about 12 minutes to unpack the whole thing. So you can see it's a very random collection again of print material of different types, different sizes. This is, for example, we're going to look at that. This is the Hackney and Stoke Newington Chamber of Commerce. And you've got these folders and boxes within the big box. It's a bit of a babushka effect you get there, right? Some of it was in better shape than others. Now, I don't know if this is something that W.H. Jones kept, and it would effectively his portfolio, and he would go and show it around to kind of show people what they can do. I hope you're not going to get sort of nauseated by kind of seeing this, but it was the only way I could condense without spending the whole talk just going through every item, just the variety that it had. And when you think again, it was just at the bottom of this wet shed, right? And it was saved based on the dates, based on the coat of arms, based on all those geeky little details. All the items are for the 1930s to 1950s. That's pretty much the time period. Okay, so you've got local businesses. We're going to talk about piano making, business cards, different sort of invitations to very kind of lavish banquets that the local council had at the time as well. A lot of great illustrations, really interesting typography, a lot of interesting designs. Almost half of those things I thought I'd love to frame in the kitchen, right? It's kind of amazing. It's those items that you might sort of go and actually buy somewhere, and all of them were just lying around. Right. So the big question for tonight was, which of those am I going to talk about? And it was quite tricky because there's so many. So I'm going to focus on a number of items. We're going to talk about local piano manufacturing, the Clissold Road swimming bath, Smith & Sons builders merchants, the Stoke Newington Borough Council items, and also the Hackney and Stoke Newington Chamber of Commerce. So I'll try and upload the whole collection online, but just given the time constraints, I can only focus on those. So let's talk about local piano manufacturing. Those of you that might know, and it might have sort of come up in the past, there was quite a very busy piano making center in Stoke Newington. Quite a few little factories were involved in that. According to some accounts, Stoke Newington was the hub of piano making at some point in the country, believe it or not. But if you think about the time that everyone, it wasn't about everyone wants an iPad. Everyone needed a piano, right? Even if you're working class, middle class, it was an essential piece of furniture. So amongst the items that we have in the catalog, you can see these for a number of the local manufacturers. This is Leswin pianos at 35A Leswin Road. And what I love is just all the tiny details, like the address, telegrams, and cablegrams. When you look on the map and see where they were, so if you look on, so this is 35, and I think this was 35A, so probably this little kind of factory, you would get to it from the little passageway, so all the deliveries will go to there. And you had a lot of those. Around 1900, there were over 200 factories and little workshops in Stoke Newington. A lot of light industry, rag trade, carpentry, a lot of manufacturing of radio parts and auto parts, and you name it. Everything was going on, sometimes just in these little alleyways and courtyards. That little item then opens up to reveal the full catalog. So I don't know if we have any kind of piano experts in the room that might say, oh, I've got this one. So that was one. And then the other one that we have is Campbell & Co. So one of another piano manufacturer, local one. Quite a lot of detail here, right? As far as the address, you can see they were based in Kerslett Road. You can see there, and we're going to see in a minute, that they actually had other brands that they acquired, but still traded under those names for the brand equity, right? In this case, Squire & Son. And again, you've got the telephone and grams. So Campbell is an interesting story. It was founded in 1911 by Michael Campbell, and it still trades today. In the 60s, it went into partnership with Yamaha, right? And if you want to get your Campbell piano today, Just go to their website. This is a view of Kerrisford Road and that entrance to a small industrial estate, if you like. So this is number 97. This is what it looks like today. And if you ever wondered, why is it called Piano Lane? Now you know. You can see on the sign, you've got Campbell & Co. It's got the office at 97A, I think. This is a view from 1952. This is the map. And you can see that there was quite a big industrial complex. You had piano factory. You actually had two. Campbell actually acquired this one in the 20s. You had printing works, food factory, toy factory, and so on. Today, all these are quite expensive flats. This is a great photo of the Campbell employees, probably on a team building exercise, right? And they're kind of outside, and you can see the spire of St. Mary's New Church. This is just a few items from the catalog that you can find online, just to give you a sense of the process and some of the work that they did. Again, I'm not a piano expert. They look kind of budget, right? Something that can fit in a small lounge, I'm guessing. This is number 95. So 97, the factory was on this site that was cleared by 1974. But it just gives you a sense of what the overall area looked like when it was Campbell's trading there. This is the other company that I mentioned. So W.H. Jones also produced this. So you can see it's the same address, but this was a much more established brand. If I'm not mistaken, it was established in 1824. So Campbell probably kept it and had actually separate letterheads, maybe depending on the clientele. You know, if you don't have a lot of money, you get the Campbell. If you have a lot of money, you get the Squire. Just to zoom in. Colonial and tropical models. We can only guess what that means. But that's a great thing about this box in the shed. You know, you can probably spend a week just researching that if you had the time, which I'm going to do right after this evening. As you can see, there were quite a few piano businesses around. This is just another example of a few of them. You had several pianos on the high street. You had Dyer's pianos in 14 Stoke Newington Road. I think in Grayling Road, it's probably the same site, different owners. But when you look at the old directories and the old ads for the area, quite a few piano dealers or manufacturers jump out. So that was pianos. Let's talk about swimming. So I guess a lot of you know where the Clissold Leisure Centre is, right opposite the school. But originally there was something else there. There was a 1930s swimming bath that we're going to talk about. And the reason is because one of my favorite items in the treasure trove is this. So this is a souvenir of the opening of the public swimming bath. So it's a nice little booklet with photos and text that describes in detail the swimming bath and all the technical aspects and the people that were involved in getting it open. Quite a few pages. I'm just going to share a few of them. The first one really gives you a sense of that building. So this is basically where you park your bike now when you go and take a swim. If you go to the gym or if you take your Zumba classes, that's there. It was quite a long kind of building. This is a different photo, not in the collection, but just to give you a sense of it. Right, so you had I guess kind of the foyer, the entrance, and then the whole swimming bath itself went all the way. Just to give you a sense on the map, so this is 1937. So this is the swimming bath. We're going to talk about this in a second. And you can see that opposite, you had the whole east side of Clissold Road that was demolished in the 60s to make room for a new school. The houses looked pretty much like the ones on the west side, but that entire side was completely demolished. These are just some photos from the construction. So this is Church Street. We're going to talk about these houses in a second. And this was the back garden of those houses where the swimming bath went. This was the foundation ceremony, I'm pretty certain. And this was the grand opening. So Prince George came. Anyone knows who Prince George in 1930 was?
Duke of Kent.
Duke of Kent, son of?
George V.
Correct. Okay, 2 points. All right. There's actually a nice little video of that opening. Now, so this is something that you can find, I believe, in the Hackney Museum. So this was the plate to commemorate that opening. So when it was pulled down, this was taken and salvaged. Other little bits that you can find, so like I said, there's quite a few pages that describe in a lot of detail the whole project in terms of the cost and who executed it and so on. It was interesting for me, for example, to find out that it was the council that purchased the properties that I'm going to show in a minute. So you had these 4 large houses on Church Street on the corner of Clissold Road called Glebe Place, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the council purchased, and then that became the site. Originally it was the gardens, but then those houses were demolished to create social housing by the London County Council. This is what the site looked like originally. So these were Glebe Place, I believe number 1 and number 2, and you can see them here. So you had these kind of 2 semi-detached pairs with very long back gardens, and the swimming bath was just here. When you look at the details, like I said, it's all about the names. So for example, you can see the architect. So this is A.G. Pori. He was actually part of a partnership, Hobden and Pori, and they definitely left their mark in Stoke Newington. They designed these buildings as well. So they were quite known to the council, right, in terms of their involvement in projects. You can also see names that you can then recognize from some of the kind of post-war housing developments. And you can see that those were councillors, aldermen, mayors in some cases. So you got Beavis House in Defoe Road, and you've got Gordon Lodge in Queen Elizabeth Walk. So once you start diving into all the pages, you can easily spend a few hours over a weekend. This was the interior. Now it's amazing because every time I post these photos, there's half the people that never went there saying it looks amazing, people that went there saying it was so cold and rusty and things came off the ceiling and I was shivering, I hated it. So I think yeah, so there's one thing admiring the photos when it was nice and new, but I think for some people at least the experience of actually going there for a swim was quite traumatic. This was the pressure filters. Again, very proud of all the mechanics and all the small details. And at the very, very end, you can see the W.H. Jones, very modest, nothing too big, not even a phone number. I showed this slide last time when I did my eBay talk. I'll show it again because it still upsets me. But when they built the swimming bath, they put the coat of arms just above the main door. Okay, there was something, you can see it here. It's the same one you can see above the entrance to the library. When they demolished it and built the leisure center, they thought the most appropriate place to put something so special is in the lower ground floor by the boxing area. Not in the reception, not outside, just when you have a bit of a boxing lesson, you can admire Stoke Newington's sort of civil past. Okay, next up we got Smith & Sons builders merchants. There were quite a few builders merchants with big sort of shops, sometimes big timber yards like Wincop's, for example, on Church Street, because there was a lot of activity. There was a lot of, like I said, small industry. W.H. Jones produced a number of items for them. So for example, some of their catalogs. This is just the content. This is quite nice. I mean, I believe this is just the label for a can, I guess. So that's just something you would just glue, right, with the actual kind of can itself. But there's so much detail. You know, if you're into kind of graphic design, typography in general, then I think there's a lot to admire. There's also this sheet of others. So again, I guess you would cut those and then just glue them. This was the site on Matthias Road. You can see it was actually called Anvil House, and we're going to see why, and it got bigger and bigger. This is what it used to look like when he was actually trading. This is another photo. Since moved in and vacated a few years ago. I don't even know if it's on the market, but we can all chip in if you want. I don't know, we can turn this to like a boutique hotel, right? When they took the signs down, the Travis Perkins ones, it was really great to see the original uncovered. And as I say, it was called Anvil House. And if you look up, it was an anvil. And they really left their mark across Stoke Newington. So if you've been to my talks about coal hole covers and all other type of utility covers, look for the anvil. Anvil, anvil. Someone even sent me a photo of their fireplace that had the anvil N16. You've got this utility cover. All right, so it was all branded. Next up, we've got the Stoke Newington Borough Council. So W.H. Jones produced a number of items for the local council. So this, for example, is the Stoke Newington Gardeners Guild Certificate of Merit. I like the bottom bit. Stimulating a pride in Stoke Newington by the cultivation of flowers and gardens. And there was a lot of gardening. If you think about Stoke Newington's sort of history, even the Victorian period, a lot of nurseries, a lot of big gardens. We actually had a talk years ago about Shirley Hibbard, the father of Victorian gardening, that lived in Lordship Terrace. This is just one example that, in the 50s, gardening was a big deal. Princess Margaret came and had a look at some of the local gardens that won some prizes. This is the tenant's rent card. Right, so if the council was your landlord, you would get this, fill it. If you look at the bottom here, the medical officer of health, the address of the town hall is Milton Road. It's not Church Street. So that tells us that this is at least before 1937, when the new town hall opened in Church Street. So if you don't know, the original town hall was in Milton Grove. Okay, so this is why this passage is called Town Hall Approach. Right, you can see it here. It used to go all the way across to Wordsworth Road. This is quite a cool one. So you've got this, like I said, they had some banquets and events. So W.H. Jones produced the menus and the programs for those events. So this is 1935. So you've got the menu, you've got grace, concert and entertainment. This was the menu. If you wonder, what would you have had in a banquet in 1935? Unfortunately, we're not serving any of those tonight, but maybe next time. And you can imagine at the end, they all held hands, stood up, and said grace. This is another item. So, Stoke Newington, electricity for electric heating. A few hints to the consumer, use less. I don't know how many of you, I'm going to look at Nick Haim to try to convert this to what the cost of electric heating was back then. The next one I'll show you is the Hackney and Stoke Newington Chamber of Commerce, which I guess is kind of like the local business association of the time. So there's a few nice items. This is a really interesting one. So this is the logo, and it's printed at a very, look quite kind of fancy paper, very kind of thin, but it's almost sort of reflective in a way. So very nice. This is something just to kind of, again, it's not part of the collection, but just to show you that union, which is quite interesting because those of you that know the slightly sort of turbulent relationship that Stoke Newington and Hackney had, mainly in the kind of the 19th century when it came to kind of local government. But as far as the businesses, they seem to have sort of come together. And you've got the coat of arms, the first one, that was then replaced in 1934. Another item that W.H. Jones printed was this, which I thought was quite topical. Press to wetted window and smooth out. Just in case you ran out of blue tack. There's also this item. And guess what? They also used to love banquets. All right? So this is the 40th Annual Ladies' Festival. Ooh, sounds glamorous. This is 1937. This is actually a photo of the same venue a bit earlier, but just to give you a sense of what it looked like. I think they had a dress code. And they also had a menu, which I'm sure you're dying to kind of see. What did they kind of eat in 1937? This was the menu. Cool. So as I said, there's a lot of items in the collection. I had to kind of cherry pick the ones that I thought provided a range of that astonishing collection that, if you think for how long it sat in that back garden for decades until it was salvaged, and all the history that it tells us, even something like this, I think is fascinating. And I don't know if someone is a food historian and they might say, look, I did my dissertation on clear turtle. This is amazing, right? You never know, trust me, the people you meet on Twitter, you just know, you don't know. So that was the final item. So thank you very much for listening.